I woke up to sunlight streaming through our bedroom curtains, my heart already racing with anticipation. June 17th, our 10th wedding anniversary. A decade of us. James's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool to the touch. I heard the shower running and smiled. For once, I'd beaten him awake on an important day. I slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen to start the coffee maker, Colombian roast, his favorite. My phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. Happy anniversary. Is he still clueless, or did you finally tell him about the surprise? I typed back quickly. Still clueless. Perfect surprise intact. We'll call you tonight with all the details. I'd been planning this for months, a private beachside dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, followed by a weekend getaway to the coastal cottage we could never afford when we were first married. The reservation had been nearly impossible to get. The cottage owner had finally agreed after I sent a handwritten letter explaining what it meant to us. Everything was perfect. The shower stopped. I quickly set my phone down and pretended to be busy with the coffee. James appeared in the doorway, hair still damp, already dressed in his standard uniform of dark jeans and a blue button-down. Morning, he said, grabbing his travel mug and filling it. Got an early meeting. Anderson's team finally sent over those API specs. I stood there waiting for him to say something else. Anything else. His eyes were already on his phone, scrolling through emails. So, today's going to be a busy one? I prompted, keeping my voice light. Insane. Might be late tonight. Don't wait up. My stomach tightened. Late? How late? He glanced up, distracted. Not sure. This integration is kicking our ass. Why? I stared at him, waiting for the realization to dawn. Nothing. No reason, I said, the words sticking in my throat. I just thought tonight might be special. Tuesday special? He smiled absently, already moving toward the door. Did I miss something? Yes, you missed everything. You're missing everything right now. It's our anniversary, James. He froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. I saw the flicker of panic, then the quick mental calculation of how to recover. Right, 10 years. I was going to surprise you later. His eyes darted around as if searching for a gift he'd never bought. You forgot, again. My voice came out flatter than I intended. Liv, come on. I've been swamped with this project. You know how important. More important than our marriage? The words hung between us. I hadn't meant to say them out loud. That's not fair, he said quietly. You know that's not what I mean. I did know. That was the worst part. He didn't mean to hurt me. He just didn't think about me enough not to. 10 years, and I still hadn't found a way to make myself a priority in his mind. I made reservations, I said, at Pescatore for 7. His face fell. Shit, Liv, I can't make 7. The team is counting on me to... To what? Save the world with another app? I regretted the bitterness in my voice immediately, but couldn't stop myself. This is our 10th anniversary. I've been planning this for months. You never said anything about special plans, he protested. I've been talking about our anniversary for weeks. I literally mentioned it yesterday. You said it was coming up, not that you'd made plans. I felt tears threatening and turned away. I wouldn't cry, not today. Fine, go to your meeting. I'll cancel everything. Liv, he sighed, setting down his coffee and approaching me. I'm sorry. I should have remembered. Let me see if I can move some things around. The apology sounded hollow after 10 years of the same conversation. I could predict exactly what would happen. He'd try to rearrange his day, something would come up, he'd be just 2 hours late, which would turn into arriving just as the restaurant was closing, full of apologies and promises to make it up to me. Don't bother, I said. Just go. He hesitated, then leaned in to kiss my cheek. I turned my face away. I'll make it up to you this weekend, he promised. We'll do whatever you want. I said nothing as he grabbed his laptop bag and headed for the door. Love you, he called, like he always did. The same 3 words tossed casually over his shoulder as he walked away. The door closed behind him, and I was alone on my anniversary. Again. I called the restaurant to cancel, the cottage owner to explain, and Morgan to vent. Then I spent the day alternating between crying and raging, between missing the man I married and wondering if he ever really existed. By evening, I'd pulled myself together enough to change into the new dress I'd bought for our dinner. It was dark blue, his favorite color on me. I'd done my makeup, styled my hair, and opened a bottle of wine. If we couldn't have our celebration at the restaurant, we'd have it at home. I could still salvage something from this day. At 9, I texted him. Dinner's ready whenever you are. At 10, food's in the fridge, warming instructions on the counter. At 11, he finally called. Liv, I'm so sorry. We hit a major bug in the integration. I'm still at the office. I looked at the cold food, the melted candles, the wine I'd finished alone. Of course you are. Don't be like that. I'm trying to fix this as fast as I can. No, you're not, I said quietly. You're not trying at all. This isn't about tonight, James. It's about 10 years of me not mattering enough for you to put a single reminder in that brilliant brain of yours. That's not fair. He repeated his phrase from this morning, his voice hardening. You know how much pressure I'm under with this launch? And you know how much this anniversary meant to me? I told you, multiple times. If it was so important, why didn't you make sure I had it in my calendar? His voice was rising now. You know how I am with dates. Because I shouldn't have to manage your calendar to get you to care about our marriage. I was shouting now, the whine and disappointment fueling my anger. I'm your wife, not your assistant. I never said you were, but you can't expect me to read your mind about how important this specific anniversary is compared to... Compared to what? The other 9 you've forgotten? Or the birthdays? Or the day we met? Or literally any date that matters to us as a couple? Silence stretched between us. I could hear him breathing, could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was frustrated. I'm coming home, he finally said. Don't bother. I stood up, my decision made. I need some air. Liv, it's pouring rain. Just wait. For what? Another 10 years of being forgettable? I hung up, grabbed my keys, and walked out into the storm. The rain was coming down in sheets, immediately soaking through my carefully chosen dress. I didn't care. I just needed to drive, to think, to be anywhere but in that house, surrounded by evidence of how little I mattered. My phone kept buzzing with his calls. I turned it off and tossed it onto the passenger seat. The windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the downpour. I could barely see the road, but I kept driving, tears blurring my vision further. I took the curve too fast, saw headlights coming toward me, felt the car hydroplane. There was a moment, just a moment of perfect clarity as I realized what was happening. Then, screeching tires, crunching metal, the explosive pressure of the airbag, and finally, nothing. I was floating, that's the only way to describe it. Weightless, painless, drifting through darkness that somehow wasn't frightening. Is this death? I wondered, surprised by my own calm. Memories flickered around me like film clips projected onto invisible screens. James and I on our first date, both of us nervous and trying not to show it. Our wedding day, his eyes filled with tears as I walked down the aisle. The night we moved into our house, sleeping on the floor because our bed hadn't arrived yet, laughing until our sides hurt. But other memories followed. James missing dinner after dinner, the gradual fade of his attentiveness, my growing silence as I stopped telling him things he'd only half hear. The slow erosion of us, year by year, forgotten date by forgotten date. What do you regret most? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, feminine but ageless, neither kind nor cruel. Being so forgettable, I answered without hesitation. Even to myself, I realized. Somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten my own worth. I'd accepted being an afterthought in my own marriage. And if you had another chance, I wouldn't let anyone forget me again, I said, surprising myself with the fierceness of my response. Especially not him. The darkness around me seemed to pulse, considering. Very well, the voice said. Remember this feeling. Remember your worth. The darkness began to compress, pushing against me from all sides. Wait, I gasped. What's happening? Your second chance, the voice said, already fading. Make it unforgettable. The pressure became unbearable. Then I jolted awake with a gasp, heart pounding. Sunlight streamed through familiar curtains. Our bedroom. Our bed. James slept peacefully beside me, one arm flung over his head in his characteristic pose. I stared at him, disoriented. A dream, I whispered. Just a dream. But it had felt so real, the anniversary, the fight, the crash. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it, hands shaking. June 10th, 7 days before our anniversary, 7 days before I died. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. This wasn't possible. Dreams didn't feel like that. So vivid, so continuous, so real. And they certainly didn't predict the future. James stirred beside me. "You okay?" He mumbled, eyes still closed. "Fine," I managed. "Just a weird dream." He made a sympathetic noise, already drifting back to sleep. Typical. Even in my hallucination, or whatever this was, some things never changed. I got out of bed carefully and went to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. In the mirror, I looked the same. No injuries, no signs of near-death experience. Just me, Olivia Chen Wilson, 35 years old, marketing executive, invisible wife. My phone buzzed again with a text. Morgan. "Coffee before work? Have news?" Morgan. My best friend who I hadn't seen in... Wait. I scrolled through our text history. We'd had coffee just last week. But in my dream, or my other life, or whatever it was, Morgan had moved to Chicago last year after getting a job offer she couldn't refuse. I texted back quickly. "Absolutely. Usual place at 7:30? Perfect. Don't be late this time." I set the phone down, trying to organize my thoughts. If this was real, if I'd somehow traveled back in time or been given a second chance, I needed to confirm it. I opened my laptop and checked my work calendar. There it was, the Lewis presentation scheduled for tomorrow. In my previous life, that presentation had gone terribly because Lewis had suddenly changed what he wanted, demanding a completely different approach 2 hours before the meeting. There were other things I could verify. The Anderson API specs that James had mentioned. Those wouldn't arrive until the 17th, our anniversary. The rainstorm that caused my accident wasn't in the forecast yet. I closed the laptop, my mind racing. This was real. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given 7 days to change my fate. James appeared in the doorway, yawning. "Coffee ready yet?" Same question as every morning. In my old life, I'd already have it waiting for him. This time, I looked up and said, "No, you can make it while I shower." He blinked, surprised, but nodded. "Sure, everything okay?" "Just running late," I said, heading for the bathroom. "Meeting Morgan before work." I didn't wait for his response. I needed to think, and I couldn't do that around him right now. Under the hot spray of the shower, I made my first decision. I wouldn't tell James about my experience. He was a literal, logical software developer. He'd think I was having some kind of breakdown, but Morgan might believe me. She'd always had an open mind about the unexplainable. I dressed quickly, choosing clothes I knew I looked good in rather than my usual practical work attire. James raised an eyebrow as I came out, but said nothing. "I'll be late tonight," he said, as I grabbed my bag. "Don't wait up." The familiar words made me freeze. How many times had I heard that exact phrase? How many dinners had gone cold? How many evenings had I spent alone because his work always came first? "Actually," I said, "I need you home by 7. We have dinner with the Parkers tonight." It was a lie. We had no such plans, but I needed to test something. "The Parkers?" He frowned. "Richard and Elise? Since when?" "Since last week when I told you about it," I said calmly. "It's on the shared calendar." It wasn't, of course. I'd invented it on the spot. Shit, I must have missed it. He ran a hand through his hair. "I'll try to wrap up early." I smiled tightly. "Great. See you at 7. As I drove to meet Morgan, I thought about what had just happened. He hadn't questioned it. He'd just assumed he'd forgotten because he so often did. And I'd weaponized that for the first time. It felt not bad. Morgan was already at our usual table when I arrived, her red hair visible from across the cafe. I felt a rush of emotion seeing her. In my other life, I'd missed her terribly after she moved. "There you are," she said as I sat down. "You look different. Did you change your hair?" "No," I said, studying her face. "My oldest friend, the person who knew me better than anyone, even James." "But I am different." She laughed. "Cryptic much? What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "If I tell you something completely insane, will you promise to hear me out before you decide I've lost my mind?" Her smile faded, replaced by concern. Liv, what's wrong? I died, I said simply. Or I will die, on my anniversary, 7 days from now. Morgan stared at me, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. I got in a car accident, I continued, the words spilling out now. During a huge fight with James because he forgot our anniversary again, and then I was somewhere else. And a voice asked what I regretted most, and I said being forgettable, and now I'm back 7 days earlier with a chance to change things. I waited for her to laugh, or suggest therapy, or back away slowly. Instead, she set down her cup and asked, "What am I about to tell you today? My news?" I blinked. I don't know, that didn't happen before. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I got an offer from Sawyer and Klein in Chicago. I haven't told anyone yet. I was going to tell you this morning. My heart dropped, just like in my other life. You're leaving. Thinking about it, she corrected. It's a huge promotion, but... She leaned forward. Liv, there is absolutely no way you could know about this. I only got the call last night. So you believe me? I believe something weird as hell is happening, she said. And if anyone I know is going to get a cosmic do-over, it would be you. She reached for my hand. Tell me everything. So I did. The anniversary plans, the fight, the crash, the void, and the voice. Waking up this morning. And now I have 7 days to, what, stop myself from dying? Fix my marriage? Figure out why I got sent back? Morgan finished her coffee, thinking. Maybe all of the above, but first things first, you need to make sure you're not in that car during that storm. Right, but no buts. You literally died, Liv. Whatever else is going on, keeping you alive is priority one. She was right, of course, but something else was taking shape in my mind. A plan that addressed not just the symptom, but the disease. I needed to make sure he never forgets again, I said slowly. Not just the anniversary, but what it means. What I mean. Morgan raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I smiled, the first genuine smile since I'd woken up in this second chance. I'm going to use what I'm good at, brand protection. Brand protection? What does that have to do with... Her eyes widened as she caught my meaning. Holy shit, you're not thinking... I'm going to trademark our anniversary, I said, the plan crystallizing as I spoke. And then I'm going to charge him a licensing fee for using it. Morgan's laugh was so loud that several people turned to stare. That is either the most insane or the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. Why not both? I checked my watch. I need to get to work, but I also need your help. With the legal side, obviously. Not just that. I gathered my things. In my other life, we drifted apart after you moved. I can't let that happen again. Morgan's face softened. Never. Even if I take this job, we're stuck with each other. Good. I stood up. Because I have a feeling I'm going to need a good lawyer and an even better friend to pull this off. As I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Power. For once, I wasn't just reacting to life happening to me. I was happening to life. And James wouldn't know what hit him. Maria, do we still have that contact at the trademark office? The one who helped with the Burton case? Maria looked up from her computer, surprised to see me in the legal department. As head of brand protection at Meridian Marketing, I was technically part of the team, but I rarely visited in person. Jason Chang. Yeah, he still owes us for that Knicks game. Why? I closed her office door. I need some unofficial advice. Off the books. Maria raised an eyebrow but gestured for me to sit. Personal or professional? Both, actually. How much do you know about trademarking dates? She leaned back, intrigued. Depends on the context. Dates themselves can't be trademarked as generic markers of time, but specific expressions, logos, or business uses associated with dates can be protected. What about anniversaries? Interesting angle. She tapped her pen against her desk. Companies trademark their founding dates all the time as part of their brand identity. Established 1867 and all that. But I'm guessing you're thinking of something more personal. I nodded, choosing my words carefully. Let's say someone wanted to create a business around anniversary planning. Could they trademark a specific date in that context? Absolutely, Maria said. You'd need to create a distinctive mark, logo, or slogan incorporating the date, and show commercial use or intent to use in commerce. But the protection would be limited to your specific industry and the exact expression you've registered. So I couldn't stop someone from generally acknowledging that date exists. No, she laughed. But you could potentially stop them from using your specific mark or slogan commercially without permission. I nodded, wheels turning. Who handles our trademark filings now that Sarah's on maternity leave? That would be Jason himself, actually. Want me to connect you? Please, and Maria, this stays between us for now. She mimed, zipping her lips. Client confidentiality, even if the client is a colleague. Back in my office, I opened a new document and began sketching ideas. I couldn't trademark June 17th itself, but I could create a business around it. June 17th celebrations was generic but a start. I needed a logo, something distinctive that tied directly to my marriage with James. Our wedding invitations had featured intertwined olive branches, a play on my name, Olivia. I'd always loved that design. I quickly sketched a circle with the date June.17 inside, surrounded by olive branches. My phone buzzed with an email from Jason Chang offering to meet that afternoon. Perfect. For the next hour, I immersed myself in my actual work, reviewing protection strategies for our clients' brands. It was what I excelled at, identifying threats to brand integrity and developing preventative measures. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now applying these same principles to my marriage. At lunch, I met Jason at a small cafe near our office. Maria says you have an interesting trademark question, he said after we'd ordered. I'm exploring a side business, I explained, anniversary planning and celebration packages, centered around a specific date that's personally significant to me. Jason nodded, unsurprised. Common starting point for many businesses. Personal connection becomes commercialized. Exactly. I've drafted a logo and business name, but I need to understand exactly what's protectable here. I showed him my sketch and explained the concept for June 17th celebrations. The date itself isn't protectable, he confirmed, echoing Maria. But this specific logo with the olive branches is distinctive. And if you create a unique slogan or phrase associated with the business, that would be protectable too. A memory surfaced, James on our first anniversary holding a single olive branch he'd picked from a tree outside the restaurant. Olive you forever, he'd said, with that goofy smile that had made me fall in love with him, and it was the last anniversary he'd remembered on his own. What about Olive You Forever June 17th, Han? I asked. Jason made a note. That's perfect. Distinctive. Ties to your logo. Clearly used in commerce for your specific services. We can absolutely file for protection on that. How quickly can this be processed? Standard timeline is several months for full registration, he said. But you can begin using the TM symbol as soon as you file, which establishes your claim. For rush cases, we can sometimes get preliminary approval in as little as a week. A week, just enough time. I'd like to move forward immediately, I said. What do you need from me? The rest of the meeting was a blur of technical details. By the time I returned to the office, I had a clear path forward. I would need to create a legitimate business, website, services, the works, but that was the easy part. My marketing background made that second nature. The hard part would be keeping it from James until the right moment. That evening, I canceled our fictional dinner with the Parkers with a casual text. Elise is sick, rain check on dinner. James responded with palpable relief. He'd clearly forgotten again and said he'd be working late. Instead of feeling hurt, I felt motivated. I spent the night setting up June 17th celebrations as a legitimate business entity. Website, social media accounts, service packages tailored to anniversary celebrations. I paid for rush processing on everything. When James finally came home after midnight, I was in bed but awake, laptop still open. Working late too? He asked, loosening his tie. Side project, I said, watching his face for any sign of curiosity. There was none. Cool, he said absently, heading for the shower. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. In the darkness, I could almost hear that voice again. Remember your worth. I was remembering. And soon, James would too. The next 5 days passed in a blur of preparation. By day, I handled my normal workload at Meridian, even successfully navigating the Lewis presentation with the foreknowledge of what he actually wanted. By night, I built June 17th celebrations into a legitimate business. Morgan helped with the legal filings, expressing both concern and admiration for my elaborate plan. Are you sure this isn't just elaborate revenge? She asked one evening as we finalized the website. It's not revenge, I said, though I'd asked myself the same question. It's reclamation of my time, my worth, my voice in this marriage. I'd designed service packages with meticulous attention to detail. The Forever package included personalized anniversary planning, custom gifts, and surprise experiences. The Memory package offered documentary-style capture of special moments. All featured the tagline, "All of you forever, June 17th, and my distinctive logo. Jason had worked miracles with the trademark application, pushing it through channels I didn't want to know about. By June 14th, 3 days before our anniversary, I had preliminary approval and the legal right to use the TM symbol. That same night, I launched the marketing campaign. Targeted ads, social media, and most crucially, physical marketing materials sent to key local businesses, including James's company. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when he came home that night, earlier than usual. "You're cooking?" he asked, surprised. I rarely cooked on weeknights anymore. "Trying a new recipe," I said, not mentioning that in my previous life, we'd ordered takeout every night this week. Small changes, rippling outward. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "Smells amazing." The familiar weight of him, the smell of his cologne, it hit me with unexpected force. This was the man I'd loved for over a decade, the man I'd died crying over. I turned in his arms. "How was your day?" "Actually, interesting. We're finalizing the Anderson proposal, and Richard suggested we send some kind of appreciation gift for their team. But he wants something more creative than the usual gift basket. Richard Park, James's business partner, who, if my plan worked, would be receiving my marketing materials tomorrow." "What did you decide on?" "That's the thing. We haven't. Richard's looking into some options." James released me and reached for the wine glasses. "Need a drink?" "Always," I said, turning back to the stove. "But tell me about the Anderson proposal. You've been working crazy hours on it." As James talked, I realized with a pang that I'd stopped asking about his work months ago. Not because I didn't care, but because his answers had become increasingly technical, full of jargon I didn't understand. But now, listening more carefully, I could appreciate the elegance of what he was building, even if I didn't grasp all the details. "Sorry," he said suddenly, setting the table. "I'm rambling about code again." "No, it's interesting," I said, and meant it. "I love how excited you get about solving these puzzles." He looked up, genuinely surprised. "You do?" Had it been that long since I'd shown interest? Had we both retreated so far into our separate worlds? "Of course, it's one of the things I've always loved about you. Your brain never stops working." He smiled, that rare, full smile that still made my heart skip. "Speaking of work that never stops, what's this side project you've been so absorbed in? You've barely looked up from your laptop all week." This was my opening. I could tell him everything now, avoid the drama of my plan. We could have an honest conversation about our marriage, about remembering what matters, but would it stick? Or would we have the same conversation we'd had every year, full of apologies and promises that evaporated as soon as work pressures returned? "Just some brand protection concepts I'm developing," I said instead. "Actually, it's related to what you were saying about client appreciation. I'm looking at new ways to mark significant dates." "Dates?" He raised an eyebrow. "Like birthdays and stuff?" "Anniversaries mostly," I said, watching his face for any flicker of recognition. There was none. June 17th meant nothing to him yet. "Interesting," he said, but his tone indicated it wasn't, really. "How's that different from what already exists?" I thought of the trademark documents, the carefully crafted legal language. It creates ownership of the celebration in a new way. "Sounds like you," he said, smiling absently. "Always finding new angles." If only he knew. We ate dinner, talking more openly than we had in months. Was it because I was making more effort? Or because I was approaching our relationship with new eyes, seeing both its flaws and its worth more clearly? After dinner, James helped clear the dishes, something he rarely did, and said, "I've missed this, us talking." "Me too," I admitted. He hesitated, then asked, "Is everything okay, Liv? You seem different lately." "Different how?" "I don't know, more present. But also like you're keeping something back." I dried my hands slowly. "I'm just reassessing some things about my life, what I want." Concern flickered across his face. "Oh, what you want? With us?" "With everything," I said, not untruthfully. "Don't worry, it's a good reassessment." He nodded, though he didn't look entirely convinced. "I've been thinking, too, about how much I've been working. After this Anderson project wraps up, maybe we should take some time off. Do something together." The irony was painful. In my previous life, he'd made the same suggestion the day after our anniversary. Too late. "That would be nice," I said, carefully neutral. "When does the project wrap up?" "Should be done by end of day on the 17th, he said, oblivious to the significance of the date. "So maybe that weekend?" I bit back a laugh that would have sounded hysterical. "The 17th, perfect." That night, as James slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself again if I was doing the right thing. Was this elaborate scheme really about saving our marriage, or punishing him for years of neglect? And if it was both, did that make me a bad person? I thought of the crash, of floating in that void, of the voice asking what I regretted most. Being forgettable? Well, after tomorrow, that wouldn't be a problem anymore. "Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this?" Morgan sat across from me in her office, surrounded by the legal documents we'd spent the last 5 days preparing. The cease and desist letter, the licensing agreement, the evidence file documenting years of forgotten anniversaries, birthdays, and significant dates. "I'm sure," I said, though my stomach was in knots. "Unless you think it won't hold up legally?" "Oh, it'll hold up for its purpose," she said. "You've created a legitimate business with a protected trademark, but Liv, this is your marriage we're talking about, not a corporate negotiation." "My marriage was dying long before I did," I said quietly. "This is shock therapy." Morgan sighed, shuffling the papers. "I've supported a lot of your crazy ideas over the years, but this one takes the cake. You realize he might just get angry, right? This could backfire spectacularly." "It could," I agreed, but doing nothing guarantees we end up exactly where we were. With me dead in a car crash and him never understanding why." Morgan flinched. "When you put it that way, I have to try something different. Something he can't ignore or forget." "Well, he definitely won't forget this." She handed me the finalized documents. "The trademarks are officially filed with the TM designation. Your business is properly registered. The cease and desist letter is legally sound, if bizarre in context. Just promise me one thing?" "What's that?" "When this all blows up, one way or another, I get to be there to see his face." I smiled, tucking the documents into my bag. "Deal." Back at my office, I found an unexpected visitor waiting. Richard Park, James's business partner. "Olivia, sorry to ambush you like this. Do you have a moment?" Richard was tall, polished, and perpetually enthusiastic, the perfect complement to James's more introverted technical focus. They'd built their company from scratch 5 years ago, and its success owed as much to Richard's people skills as to James's coding genius. "Of course, come in," I said, motioning to the chair across from my desk. "What brings you to this side of town?" "Serendipity," he said, pulling out a familiar-looking brochure. "I received this in the mail this morning and recognized your name on the business registration." My heart skipped. It was one of my June 17th celebrations marketing packages. "Ah," I said carefully, "my side project." "It's brilliant," Richard said, eyes bright with interest. "We've been looking for exactly this kind of service for our client appreciation program. The Anderson team has been with us for 5 years as of June 17th, I finished, a strange feeling washing over me. Richard looked surprised. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess," I said, mind racing. This was an unexpected complication. "So you're interested in using my services for Anderson?" "Absolutely. Your package offering is exactly what we've been looking for. Something personal but professional. And the coincidence of the date is perfect." I smiled tightly. Actually, it's not a coincidence. No? June 17th is my anniversary with James, our 10th this year. Richard's face went through a comical series of expressions: surprise, confusion, then dawning realization. Wait, you started a company based on your anniversary date? I did, I said, deciding honesty was the best approach. It's a special date for me, obviously, and I noticed there was a gap in the market for truly personalized anniversary experiences. That's. He seemed at a loss for words. Does James know about this? Not yet, I admitted. It was going to be a surprise. Richard leaned back, eyebrows raised. Some surprise. I like to think of it as creative problem solving. Well, I'm impressed, he said finally, and still interested in your services for Anderson. Though now it feels a bit weird to be celebrating our client relationship on your wedding anniversary. I saw an opportunity and seized it. Actually, it's perfect. You'd be my first official client. And who better than my husband's company? Richard laughed. When you put it that way, shall we discuss details? For the next half hour, we went through the corporate package I'd created, discussing customization options for Anderson. By the end, Richard had signed a contract for services on June 17th with a substantial deposit. As he stood to leave, he paused. Just one thing. Should I mention this to James? Or keep it as part of your surprise? I considered the question carefully. If Richard told James about the business, it might give away my plan too early. But if he mentioned it only in passing, you can mention that you found an interesting anniversary service for Anderson, I said casually. No need to go into details about who's behind it. Richard smiled conspiratorially. Got it. This is going to be interesting. After he left, I sat at my desk, stunned by this unexpected turn of events. Not only had I secured my first legitimate client, but I now had an organic way for James to hear about my business before the big reveal. Everything was falling into place with an almost eerie precision. It felt like the universe was conspiring to help my plan succeed, or setting me up for an even more spectacular failure. Either way, there was no turning back now. So let me get this straight, Dr. Emma Roberts said, tapping her pen against her notepad. You believe you died in a car accident, were given a second chance at life, and are now using that chance to trademark your anniversary date to teach your husband a lesson? Put that way, it did sound completely insane. I'd decided to see a therapist after realizing I might need help processing what was happening to me. Dr. Roberts had come highly recommended for her open-minded approach to unusual situations. I know how it sounds, I said. If I were you, I'd be reaching for the psychiatric referral pad right now. Actually, I find it fascinating, she said, surprising me. Whether your experience was a literal rebirth or an extremely vivid psychological event doesn't change the fact that it's prompted you to take action in your marriage that's significant. So you don't think I'm crazy? I think you're processing trauma in a highly creative way, she said carefully. The more important question is, what do you hope to achieve with this plan? I'd ask myself the same question repeatedly. I want him to understand how it feels to have something important commodified and forgotten. I want him to see me, really see me, for the first time in years. And you believe this shock tactic is the only way to achieve that? I tried the other ways, I said quietly. For years. Conversations, counseling suggestions, scheduling date nights that he'd cancel at the last minute. None of it stuck. Because you didn't matter enough to him? The blunt question stung. Because his work became his entire identity. And I became furniture. Something comfortable in the background of his life. Dr. Roberts nodded thoughtfully. This rebirth experience has clearly given you a new perspective on your own worth. That's positive. But I wonder if there might be less confrontational ways to communicate that to your husband? Probably, I admitted. But frankly, we're out of time for gentle approaches. In my other timeline, I died in 3 days. And you believe this plan will prevent that? I believe it will keep me out of that car on that night, I said. Beyond that, I don't know, but I have to try something drastic. Dr. Roberts studied me for a long moment. Olivia, whether or not your experience was literal or metaphorical, It's clearly catalyzed something important for you. My only caution is to remember that your goal isn't to punish James, but to reconnect with him. Keep that distinction clear in your mind. I nodded, her words hitting home. I'm not sure the line between those things is as clear as it should be. That's honest, at least, she smiled. Schedule another appointment for after the anniversary. I'm very curious to see how this plays out. She wasn't the only one. When I got home that evening, I was surprised to find James already there, on his laptop at the kitchen table. You're home early, I said, setting down my bag full of legal documents. Working remotely, he said, not looking up. The office was too distracting. Richard's gone anniversary crazy. My heart jumped. Anniversary. For Anderson. Apparently, it's 5 years on the 17th, and he's making a whole thing of it. I kept my face neutral as I opened the refrigerator. That's nice of him. It's Richard being Richard, James said with a hint of irritation. He found some service that specializes in anniversary celebrations. June something. Seems excessive for a client relationship, if you ask me. I turned, unable to help myself. What's excessive about marking important dates? James finally looked up, something in my tone catching his attention. Nothing, I guess. Just the pageantry of it all. Richard said they customize everything around the specific date. Seems gimmicky. Or thoughtful, I suggested, depending on your perspective. Maybe, he conceded, returning to his screen. Anyway, the upside is they're pushing the final integration deadline to the 18th to accommodate this celebration thing. So the 17th won't be as crazy as I thought. I nearly dropped the glass I was holding. So you'll be available that evening? Should be. Why? Here it was, my opening to simply tell him it was our anniversary, to ask him to make plans with me, to avoid this entire elaborate scheme. But then I remembered floating in that void, telling the voice my deepest regret, being forgettable. No reason, I said lightly, just making conversation. The doorbell rang before he could respond. I opened it to find Casey, James's sister, holding what looked like a marketing package identical to the one I'd sent Richard. Well, well, she said, pushing past me into the house. You've been busy. Casey and I had always had a complicated relationship. She was fiercely protective of her brother, and though we got along well enough, there was always an undercurrent of competition between us. Casey, James called from the kitchen. What brings you by? This, she said, holding up my brochure. Found it at my office today. I tensed, preparing for her to expose my plan. But to my surprise, she gave me a small conspiratorial wink. Apparently, there's a new anniversary celebration service in town, she continued, dropping the brochure on the table in front of James. Thought it might be relevant to your interests. James barely glanced at it. Yeah, Richard's using them for the Anderson thing. Anderson? Casey looked confused. What does that have to do with business client? I cut in quickly. 5-year anniversary. Understanding dawned in Casey's eyes. Right, the business thing. The only anniversary that would be on your radar, obviously. James looked up, catching the edge in her voice. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, Casey said innocently. Just making an observation about priorities. James frowned, glancing between us. Am I missing something here? Always, Casey muttered. Casey, I said firmly, can I talk to you outside for a minute? Once we were on the porch, I turned to her. How did you know? That my brother is oblivious to significant dates? Lifetime of experience? She said dryly. That you've created an entire business to make a point about it? The fact that your name is on the business registration and the trademark application, which is public record. I sighed. It's not just to make a point, it's a legitimate business concept. Sparked by legitimate frustration, she countered. Liv, I love my brother, but he's an idiot when it comes to remembering important dates. Always has been. I used to set reminders on his phone for Mom's birthday. And now? Now he's a grown man who should figure it out himself, she said firmly. So what's the plan here? Wait until he realizes he's violated your trademark by having an anniversary without paying the licensing fee? Put that way, it did sound ridiculous. Something like that. Casey laughed, surprising me. It's brilliant. Insane, but brilliant. When's the big reveal? On our anniversary, June 17th. The same day as this Anderson thing, she noted. Perfect timing. He'll be thoroughly confused. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering me. Do you think it's cruel? Casey considered this. No. What's cruel is watching someone you love be repeatedly hurt by someone who should know better. She sighed. Look, James is my brother, and I'd do anything for him. But he's taken you for granted for years. I've seen it. Mom's seen it. Everyone has. Then why hasn't anyone said anything? Because it's not our place, she said simply. But now that you're doing something about it, she grinned. Count me in. In? What do you mean? I mean, I want to help, whatever you need to pull this off. I studied her, surprised by the offer. Why would you help me ambush your brother? Because I want my brother's marriage to succeed, she said seriously. And clearly, the gentle approach isn't working. Sometimes you need a sledgehammer to break through a concrete skull. I couldn't help but laugh. That's one way to put it. Yeah, so, partners in crime? I thought about it. Having Casey on my side would definitely help, and might soften James's reaction when he realized what I'd done. Partners, I agreed, shaking her outstretched hand. As Casey left, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't alone in this crazy plan anymore. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt like I might actually succeed. Not just in staying alive, but in saving my marriage. Now I just had to make it through the next 3 days without giving away the game. Have you seen this? James looked up from his phone as I entered the kitchen. Someone's trying to make money off random calendar dates now. I peered over his shoulder, heart racing. He was looking at a local business blog that had featured June 17th celebrations as an innovative new service. Interesting, I said, keeping my voice casual. What do you think of the concept? It's clever marketing, he admitted. Create artificial scarcity around something that's freely available. Like those companies that sell star naming rights. Maybe it's not about owning the date, I suggested, pouring coffee, but about making it special, memorable. For a fee, he pointed out. Isn't that worth it, though, if it means not forgetting something important? He scrolled through the article, oblivious to my pointed question. I guess. Richard's gone all in on it for the Anderson thing. He's even bought custom gift packages for their whole team. A pang of guilt hit me. I'd been so focused on my plan to shock James that I'd almost forgotten I had an actual client now with real expectations. When is the Anderson celebration exactly? I asked. Lunchtime tomorrow. Richard's rented out that new rooftop place downtown. Relief washed over me. My confrontation with James was planned for the evening. The timing was perfect. Sounds nice, I said. Will you be home after or working late? Should be home at a normal time for once, he said, setting down his phone. The integration is mostly done. Just some testing tomorrow morning. Another wave of déjà vu hit me. In my previous life, he'd said something similar, right before getting caught up in work and forgetting our anniversary entirely. I'll make dinner then, I said, the words feeling surreal. Was I setting myself up for the same disappointment? Or laying the groundwork for my grand reveal? Great, he said, standing and kissing my cheek. I'm heading in early today. See you tonight? I nodded, unable to trust my voice. As he grabbed his laptop bag and headed for the door, I had the sudden urge to stop him, to tell him everything about the rebirth, the trademark, the accident. But I let him go. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. After he left, I called Morgan. Everything's ready for tomorrow. Casey's on board too. Casey? Morgan sounded surprised. James's sister. I thought she'd be the first to call you crazy. Apparently, she's been waiting years for me to stand up to him, I said, still a bit shocked myself. She's coming over tonight to help with the final preparations. And how are you feeling about all this? Morgan asked. Having second thoughts? I considered the question carefully. I'm nervous, scared even, but also resolved. This isn't just about the anniversary anymore, Morgan. It's about whether our marriage has a future at all. Just remember what Dr. Roberts said. The goal is reconnection, not punishment. I know, I sighed, but first I need his full attention, and this is the only way I can think to get it. That evening, Casey arrived with takeout and a mischievous gleam in her eye. Final preparations for Operation Trademark? Something like that, I said, clearing space on the dining table. I need to finalize the cease and desist letter and prepare the anniversary display. The what now? I showed her the collection of photos, cards, and mementos I'd gathered from our previous anniversaries. I'm going to set this up tomorrow while he's at work. Evidence of all the anniversaries he's forgotten or minimized. Casey whistled low. That's cold, Liv. Effective, but cold. Too much? She considered the display. No, it's honest, and sometimes honesty hurts. We worked in companionable silence for a while, arranging photos and finalizing documents. There was something therapeutic about laying out the physical evidence of our relationship's slow deterioration. Can I ask you something? Casey said finally. Do you still love him? The question stopped me short. Yes, I said after a moment. I do. That's what makes this so hard. Then why go through with it? Why not just tell him how you feel? Because I have, I said simply. Over and over, and nothing changes. Casey nodded, understanding. He gets tunnel vision. Always has. When we were kids, he'd get so focused on a project he'd forget to eat. That's cute when you're building a science fair project, I said. Less cute when you're building a life together. True, she agreed. But that intensity is also why he's good at what he does. Why his company is succeeding. I know, I sighed. I've never wanted him to change who he is. I just want to matter enough to be included in his field of vision. Casey reached across the table and squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I think this crazy plan might actually work. If anything can get through to him, it's this. I hope you're right, I said, staring at the pile of legal documents. Because if this doesn't work, I'm not sure what's left for us. After Casey left, I sat alone in the quiet house, looking at the evidence of 10 years together. Photos from happier times. Cards with promises of eternal love. The dried olive branch from our first anniversary preserved in a small frame. James came home late, as usual, apologizing about a last-minute issue with the Anderson implementation. I nodded and smiled, the script so familiar I could have recited his lines for him. As we got ready for bed, he paused, looking at me with unusual intensity. Is everything okay, Liv? You've been different lately. Different how? I don't know, more distant. Like you're preparing for something. Perceptive, finally, when it was almost too late. Just thinking about the future, I said carefully. What I want from life. He sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly serious. Are you unhappy? With us? The direct question caught me off guard. This conversation hadn't happened in my previous life. I searched for the right words. I'm tired of feeling invisible, James. Of being an afterthought in your life. He looked genuinely stunned. You're not an afterthought. You're everything to me. Am I? I asked quietly. When was the last time you showed me that? Really showed me, not just said the words? He opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly searching for an example and coming up empty. That's what I thought, I said, getting into bed and turning away from him. Good night, James. I felt him sit there for a long time before finally lying down beside me. Neither of us slept much that night. The silence between us filled with unspoken words and the ticking of the clock, counting down to our anniversary. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. I woke alone, the space beside me already cold. For a moment, panic seized me. It was happening again, just like before. But then I saw the note on James's pillow. Early meeting about Anderson. Left you coffee. Back this afternoon. Love you. The same note from my previous life, word for word. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of déjà vu pressing down on me. Today was the day, June 17th, our 10th anniversary, the day I had died. But this time would be different. This time, I was prepared. I checked my phone. Messages from Morgan and Casey checking in. A confirmation email from the trademark office. My application for Olive You Forever, June 17th, had received expedited approval. It was official. I spent the morning setting up the anniversary display in the dining room, arranging photos and mementos in chronological order. Year 1, when he'd remembered on his own. Year 2, when I'd had to remind him a week before. Years 3 through 9, each with decreasing effort on his part and increasing disappointment on mine. At 11, I called Richard Park. Olivia, just about to head to the venue. Everything's set up beautifully. I'm glad to hear it, I said. I just wanted to make sure you had what you needed for the Anderson celebration. Everything's perfect. The custom packages are a hit already. Anderson's CEO was blown away by the personalization. I've already had 3 other clients ask about your services. That's great, I said, genuinely pleased despite the circumstances. But Richard, there's something else I need to tell you. What's that? Today isn't just Anderson's 5-year anniversary, it's also my 10th wedding anniversary with James. Silence on the line. Then, please tell me you're joking. I'm not. And he doesn't remember. Not so far. Richard groaned. Olivia, I'm so sorry. If I'd known, I never would have scheduled. It's not your fault, I assured him. James never mentioned it because he doesn't remember. But I wanted you to know before things get complicated this afternoon. Complicated how? Richard asked warily. James may be receiving some legal documents regarding unauthorized use of my trademarked date. Another long silence. Then Richard began to laugh. You trademarked your anniversary date and he has no idea? I don't even know what that is. Genius? Terrifying? A little of both, I admitted. I just didn't want you caught in the crossfire. I appreciate the warning, he said, still chuckling. For what it's worth, I think it's brilliant. James needs a wake-up call, and this is certainly creative. Or you're not angry? Why would I be? You've provided an exceptional service for our client, and you're about to provide an exceptional life lesson for my partner. That's value added in my book. After we hung up, I finished my preparations. The cease and desist letter printed on official letterhead, the licensing agreement Morgan had helped draft, the evidence file documenting years of neglect. At noon, I sent James a simple text. Happy anniversary. No response. At 1, I called his office. His assistant said he was in the Anderson celebration and couldn't be disturbed. At 2, I put on the blue dress I'd worn in my previous life, the one I'd died in, a reminder to myself of what was at stake. At 3, I received a text from Casey. He just left the celebration. Operation Trademark is a go. At 3:30, my phone rang. James. Liv, he said, his voice tight with panic. I am so sorry. I completely forgot what today is. Did you? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Or did you just not think it was important enough to remember? Of course it's important. It's our anniversary, 10 years. I'm an idiot. Yes, I agreed. You are. He sounded taken aback by my bluntness. I'm coming home now. We can still salvage the day. Dinner reservations, whatever you want. I'll be here, I said. And James, you might want to stop and pick up a good lawyer on your way. A lawyer? What are you talking about? You'll see when you get home. I hung up before he could respond, heart pounding. The confrontation I'd been planning for a week, or perhaps for years, was finally at hand. The question was, what would remain of our marriage when it was over? James burst through the front door at 4:15, arms full of hastily bought roses and a gift bag from the jewelry store down the street. Liv, he called, sounding desperate. I'm so sorry. I know I screwed up, but I want to make it right. I was sitting calmly at the dining table, surrounded by the anniversary display and the legal documents. In here, I called, arranging my face into a neutral expression. He appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with visible confusion. His eyes moved from the photos to the documents to my face. What is all this? Evidence, I said simply. Please, sit down. Liv, I know I forgot our anniversary, again, and I'm truly sorry, but this seems excessive. Excessive, I repeated. Interesting choice of word. Please sit. He sat cautiously, setting down the flowers and gift bag. You're scaring me a little. Good, I said. Fear indicates attention, and I finally have yours. I slid the cease and desist letter across the table. This is for you. He picked it up, frowning. June 17th celebrations. Wait, this is the company Richard used for the Anderson thing. His eyes widened as he scanned further. Olivia Chen Wilson, founder and CEO. What the hell? Keep reading, I said calmly. Cease and desist unauthorized emotional usage of the trademarked phrase, all of you forever, June 17th. Liv, what is this? Exactly what it looks like. I've trademarked our anniversary date, or more specifically, a business and slogan built around it. And you, James Wilson, have been using it without permission or acknowledgement for years. He stared at me, mouth open. This is a joke, right? Do I look like I'm joking? I gestured to the legal documents. The trademark was approved this morning. The business is registered and legitimate. I even have my first client, your company. James set down the letter, eyes moving to the display of photos. And all this? Evidence of prior infringement, I said. 10 years of documented negligence. He shook his head, disbelief giving way to anger. This is insane. You can't trademark a date. Not the date itself, no. But a specific expression and usage of it? Absolutely. And what exactly do you hope to accomplish with this stunt? I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. I want you to understand what it feels like to have something important commodified and forgotten, to have your feelings treated as an inconvenience, to be made invisible in your own life. You have, I cut him off, for years. And I let you because I told myself your work was important, that your distraction was temporary, that eventually you'd remember I exist. That's not fair, he protested. I know I've been working too much, but I've never forgotten you exist. Haven't you? I slid the evidence file toward him. Open it. Reluctantly, he did. Inside were printed emails, text messages, and notes documenting each forgotten date, each missed dinner, each promise broken. I documented everything, I said quietly. Every time you said you'd be home for dinner and weren't. Every time you missed an important event because work came up. Every anniversary where I reminded you weeks in advance only for you to forget anyway. He flipped through the pages, face growing pale. I didn't realize it was this many. 67, I said. 67 significant moments in our relationship that you deemed less important than whatever was happening at work. He closed the file, looking stricken. Liv, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I had no idea it had gotten this bad. Because you weren't paying attention, I said simply, and an apology isn't enough anymore. Hence the licensing agreement. I slid the final document across the table. He picked it up warily. Terms for continued marital usage of the date June 17th, he read aloud. Licensing fee to be paid annually in the form of... He looked up, expression shifting from confusion to understanding. This isn't about money. No, I agreed, it never was. He read the terms more carefully now. Licensee agrees to provide his undivided attention for a minimum of 1 full day per month, scheduled in advance. Licensee agrees to attend monthly relationship review meetings to assess compliance with terms. Licensee agrees to engage in couples therapy to address underlying issues of neglect and prioritization. He set down the document, looking at me with new eyes. This isn't just about today, is it? This is about us, our whole marriage. Yes, I said simply. Today was just the breaking point. So what happens now? If I don't sign your licensing agreement, you'll what? Divorce me? The blunt question hung in the air between us. In my previous life, our argument had escalated to threats of divorce before I'd stormed out to my death. This time, I took a deep breath and told the truth. I don't want a divorce, James. I want a marriage, a real one, where both people are fully present, where I don't have to create an elaborate scheme just to get your attention for an hour. He was quiet for a long moment, looking at the evidence of our years together spread across the table. I knew I'd been distracted, he finally said, but I had no idea it was this systematic, this cruel. Not intentionally cruel, I clarified, just consistently neglectful, which over time amounts to the same thing. He nodded slowly. When did you start planning all this? The trademark, the business? A week ago, I said, deciding to keep the rebirth experience to myself for now. I had a moment of clarity where I saw where we were headed if nothing changed. And where was that? I thought of the crash, the void, the voice. Nowhere good. He picked up the licensing agreement again, reading it more carefully. Some of these terms are actually reasonable. Therapy has been on my to-do list for a while. Has it? I asked, genuinely surprised. Yeah, Richard suggested it months ago. He said I was becoming a work robot who was going to lose everything that mattered if I didn't get help. This was new information. In my previous life, he'd never mentioned therapy. And you didn't tell me because admitting I needed help felt like failure, he said quietly. And because I didn't want you to know how much I was struggling to balance everything. For the first time in our conversation, I felt a crack in my carefully constructed resolve. James, that's exactly the kind of thing you're supposed to tell me. We're partners. Or at least, we're supposed to be. I know, he sighed. I've been an idiot. A workaholic idiot who's taken his brilliant, patient wife for granted. Yes, I agreed, you have. He looked up, a ghost of his old smile appearing. But a brilliant, patient wife who trademarked our anniversary to make a point? That's a new level of creative problem solving. Despite everything, I felt myself smiling back. I had to do something dramatic. Subtle wasn't working. No kidding. He gestured to the documents. This is subtle like a sledgehammer. Sometimes that's what it takes to break through concrete, I said, echoing Casey's words. James reached across the table, taking my hand. I deserve every bit of this, and I'm sorry, Liv. Truly sorry for making you feel invisible, for forgetting what matters most. I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I don't want apologies, James. I want change. I know, he said, his grip tightening on my hand. And I want that too. I've just been too caught up in work to see how far off track we've gotten. He picked up a pen and, to my surprise, signed the licensing agreement. There, he said, it's official. I'm licensed to continue being your husband, under the new terms and conditions. I stared at his signature, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, relief, hope, and underneath it all, a lingering fear that nothing would really change. You know the real irony of all this? He asked, setting down the pen. What's that? I actually did remember our anniversary initially. I had it in my calendar from months ago. But when Richard scheduled the Anderson thing on the same day, I convinced myself I must have gotten the date wrong. Because surely if it was really our anniversary, I would have said something, right? I shook my head, amazed at the mental gymnastics. You doubted your own calendar rather than simply asking me? Like I said, idiot. He looked at me with genuine remorse. But an idiot who loves you and wants to do better. That's a start, I said cautiously. But James, this can't be a one-time correction. This has to be a permanent change in how we relate to each other. I know, he said seriously. That's why I'm agreeing to therapy. And the monthly review meetings, and everything else in this very creative legal document my very intimidating wife has prepared. Despite everything, I laughed. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm trying to save us. From what? I thought again of the crash, of floating in that void. From losing everything that matters while chasing things that don't. He nodded slowly. Message received, loud and clear. He gestured to the dining room. So now what? Do I still need to sleep on the couch? Or can we salvage what's left of our anniversary? I considered the question. In my grand plan, I hadn't thought much past this confrontation. I'd been so focused on getting his attention that I hadn't planned what to do once I had it. That depends, I said finally. What did you have in mind? He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Well, first, I think I owe you a proper anniversary gift. He slid the jewelry store bag across the table. Inside was a small box containing a necklace with a pendant shaped like an olive branch. I called Casey from the car, he admitted. She told me about your Olive You Forever trademark and suggested this. She also called me several unflattering names that I completely deserved. I touched the necklace, moved despite myself. It's beautiful. Second, he continued, I made dinner reservations at Pescatore, the same place you had planned for last week. The owner remembered you when I called. He said something about a handwritten letter that convinced him to hold a table for us. My eyes widened. You talked to Marco? He was very understanding when I explained that I'd been an oblivious idiot who was trying to make amends. Apparently, he's seen a few of those in his time. I shook my head, amazed at how quickly things were turning around. And what's the third thing on this plan of yours? I took the rest of the week off, he said simply. And not just for us to figure things out, though that's important, but also because your business has its first major client and they need your full attention. What? Richard told me everything about how you created a real business with real services and how impressed Anderson was with what you put together for them. He squeezed my hand. He also asked if we'd be interested in a partnership, your anniversary planning expertise with our corporate software, customized remembrance solutions. I stared at him, trying to absorb this unexpected turn. You want to go into business with me? After I just legally threatened you? I think it's brilliant, he said. The business idea, not the legal threat. Though I have to admit, as wake-up calls go, that was pretty effective. I laughed, the tension of the past week finally beginning to release. This isn't how I expected this conversation to go. How did you expect it to go? More shouting, I admitted, more defensiveness, maybe you walking out. I've done enough walking out, he said quietly, and missed enough important moments. It's time I started walking toward you instead. The sincerity in his voice brought tears to my eyes. I stood up and walked around the table sitting beside him. I need you to understand something, I said, taking both his hands in mine. This isn't just about the anniversary, it's about feeling like I matter in your life. Like what's important to me is important to you. I do understand, he said, his voice rough with emotion. And I'm going to prove it to you, not just today, but every day, starting now. He leaned forward and kissed me, gently at first, then with increasing intensity. I felt the familiar spark between us, the connection that had been smothered under years of neglect but had never quite died out. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. So, Mrs. Chen Wilson, do I have your permission to celebrate our anniversary? Or do I need to sign more paperwork first? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Permission granted, but I'm keeping the trademark. I wouldn't have it any other way. Later that night, as we sat at Pescatore, at the same table where we'd had our first date 11 years ago, James raised his glass. To my brilliant, persistent wife, who went to extraordinary lengths to save our marriage. And to the next 10 years, which I promise will be properly acknowledged and celebrated. I clinked my glass against his. To new beginnings. As we ate and talked, really talked, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I thought about the voice in the void, about being forgettable. I wasn't forgettable anymore, and I never would be again. So let me get this straight, Dr. Roberts said, tapping her pen against her notepad. You actually went through with it? The trademark, the cease and desist letter, everything? Every bit of it, I confirmed. It was a week after our anniversary. James and I had our first joint session with Dr. Roberts, having agreed that professional help was necessary to rebuild what had been broken. And your response? Dr. Roberts asked James. He shifted in his seat. After the initial shock, actually, relief. Relief? Dr. Roberts and I asked simultaneously. James nodded. It's hard to explain, but it was like being shaken awake from a dream where I was slowly drowning. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't seem to break the surface. Interesting metaphor, Dr. Roberts noted. And now I'm breathing again, he said simply, seeing clearly for the first time in years. I reached over and squeezed his hand, still amazed at the transformation of the past week. True to his word, James had taken time off work. We'd spent days talking, really talking, about what had gone wrong and how to fix it. Olivia, Dr. Roberts turned to me. You took a significant risk with this approach. It could have backfired spectacularly. I know, I admitted, but I was out of options. In my vision of our future, nothing changed. We just kept drifting further apart until it was too late. I'd told Dr. Roberts about my rebirth experience, but we'd agreed to frame it as a vivid premonition or anxiety dream for James's benefit. The full truth could come later, if ever. And do you think this intervention has fundamentally changed your relationship dynamic? Dr. Roberts asked. I looked at James, considering. I think it opened the door to change, but the real work is just beginning. I agree, James said. The trademark thing got my attention. Hard not to when your wife serves you legal papers on your anniversary. He smiled ruefully. But that was just the wake-up call. The real change has to happen every day, in small moments. Such as, Dr. Roberts prompted, such as me actually using my calendar for personal commitments, not just work. Such as us having dinner together every night this week and really talking, not just coexisting. Such as me finally meeting Olivia's new team at work yesterday, people she's worked with for months that I'd never bothered to ask about. I nodded, remembering how James had surprised me at my office, bringing lunch and taking time to meet each of my colleagues. The small gesture had meant more than any grand apology. And what about the business? Dr. Roberts asked. June 17th celebrations? It's real, I said, still somewhat surprised myself. We've had 3 more clients sign on since the Anderson event. We're treating it as a legitimate side business, James added. Olivia's expertise in brand protection combined with celebration planning is actually a unique market position. And the irony isn't lost on me, I admitted. That the business I created to shock my husband into awareness is now something we're building together. Life often works that way, Dr. Roberts smiled. The crisis becomes the opportunity. As we left the session, walking hand in hand to the car, James asked, "Do you think we'll ever tell her the whole truth? About how you knew what was going to happen?" I'd told James partial truths, that I'd had a powerful premonition about our marriage ending badly if things didn't change. Not about dying in a car crash, or being given a second chance by a mysterious voice. That seemed too much even now. Maybe someday, I said, when it doesn't sound quite so crazy. I don't think it's crazy, he said, surprising me. I think somewhere deep down we always know when something's wrong. You just found a creative way to listen to that voice. I thought about the void, the floating sensation, the question about my deepest regret. Had it been real, a near-death experience, or just my subconscious finally screaming loudly enough that I couldn't ignore it? What matters is that we heard it, I said finally, before it was too late. James stopped walking and turned to face me. I need you to know something. I'm grateful, Liv, for the wake-up call, for the second chance, even for the trademark. He smiled. Not many men can say their wife literally had to create a business and invoke intellectual property law to get their attention. Not many men are as oblivious as you were, I teased. True, he acknowledged. But not many women are as determined and creative as you are. You could have just left me. The words hung in the air between us, the unspoken truth we'd been dancing around. I could have given up. Many would have. I almost did, I admitted. In my vision or whatever it was. I was driving away when the accident happened. He pulled me close, his arms tight around me. I'm so glad you found another way. I can't imagine my life without you in it. You won't have to, I promised. Just don't make me trademark any more significant dates. What, like your birthday? Christmas? The day we met? Don't give me ideas, I warned. I've still got those legal templates. He laughed, the sound warming me from the inside out. I'll keep the calendar updated. Promise? As we drove home, I thought about the journey of the past 2 weeks. From death to rebirth, from invisibility to being truly seen. It wasn't perfect. We still had years of patterns to unlearn, trust to rebuild, habits to change. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Real hope, not just wishful thinking. What are you thinking about? James asked, glancing over. The future, I said. Our future. Which looks like? I smiled, reaching for his hand. Unknown, unpredictable, but together. Actually together, not just occupying the same space. He brought my hand to his lips. I liked the sound of that. So did I. And somewhere in the universe, I felt that ageless voice approving of the choice I'd made. To fight for what mattered, to refuse to be forgotten, to insist on my place in my own life. To be, finally and completely, unforgettable. 3 months after the anniversary that changed everything, I stood in the newly renovated office of June 17th celebrations, putting the finishing touches on our logo wall. The olive branch design had evolved, becoming more sophisticated while staying true to the original concept. Looks perfect, James said, coming up behind me with coffee. Though I still can't believe our conference room has a giant reminder of the day I almost ruined our marriage. Think of it as a daily reminder not to screw up again, I teased, accepting the coffee gratefully. The office was small but elegant, a converted storefront downtown. What had started as a scheme to get my husband's attention had transformed into a thriving business with a growing client list. We specialized in meaningful anniversary celebrations for both corporate partnerships and personal relationships, with an emphasis on creating traditions that couldn't be forgotten. James had developed an app that complemented our services, a sophisticated reminder system that went beyond simple calendar alerts to create escalating awareness of approaching significant dates. It was called Never Forget, with the tagline, "Because some dates should be unforgettable." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "The Washburns are coming in at 11, James reminded me, checking his phone. "First consultation for their 25th wedding anniversary next year?" "I've got the portfolio ready," I said, "and Morgan's coming by to help with the contract specifics." Morgan had become our unofficial legal counsel, handling the business aspects while maintaining her regular job. She'd ultimately turned down the Chicago offer, deciding that Alexandria held more opportunity than she'd realized. Casey arrived as we were setting up for the meeting, carrying a box of freshly printed brochures. "Hot off the press," she announced, setting them on the reception desk, "and looking good if I do say so myself." Casey had surprised us all by leaving her corporate job to join June 17th celebrations as our marketing director. "Turns out watching you two rebuild your marriage made me reassess what I was doing with my life," she'd explained. "If my workaholic brother can change, anyone can." The Washburns arrived precisely at 11, a well-dressed couple in their late 40s, with the slightly awkward body language of people who'd been together a long time but had grown apart. "Welcome," I greeted them, recognizing something of myself and James in their careful politeness toward each other. "Let's talk about how we can make your 25th anniversary truly unforgettable." As I led them through our consultation process, I caught James watching me with a soft smile. "What?" I mouthed when the Washburns were looking through our portfolio. "Just proud of you," he mouthed back. And I was proud of what we'd built, of how far we'd come, of the second chance we'd seized with both hands. After the Washburns left, having signed a contract for our most comprehensive anniversary package, James pulled me into our small office. "They reminded me of us," he said. "Before." "I noticed that too," I admitted. "That careful distance, the formality." "Do you think we can help them? Really help them?" I considered the question seriously. I think we can give them the opportunity to remember why they chose each other in the first place. What happens after that is up to them. James nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's strange, isn't it? How easily we forget the most important things." "Human nature," I said. "We take for granted what's always there." "Not anymore," he promised, pulling me close. "Not a single day." He'd kept that promise in the months since our confrontation. The changes weren't just in grand gestures, but in small daily habits. Texting during the day just to check in. Actually listening when I talked about work. Coming home when he said he would. Setting aside dedicated time each week just for us. And I'd changed too. I'd become more direct about my needs, more willing to call him out when old patterns emerged. I'd stopped swallowing disappointment and hoping things would magically improve. We'd both learned that real change required constant attention. That evening, as we closed the office and walked home together, another new habit, James asked, "Have you thought any more about Richard's expansion proposal?" Richard had suggested taking June 17th celebrations national, with franchise opportunities in major cities. It was an exciting prospect, but also daunting. "I'm still considering it," I said. "Part of me worries about growing too fast, losing the personal touch that makes us special. And the other part is excited about the possibility of helping more couples find their way back to each other," I admitted. "Like we did." James squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." 100%? 100%, he confirmed. "Licensed and fully committed." I laughed, shaking my head. "The licensing fee joke is never going to get old for you, is it?" "Nope, it's my favorite reminder of how brilliant and slightly terrifying my wife can be." As we reached our front door, I paused, suddenly struck by the parallels between now and 3 months ago. The same house, the same marriage, and yet everything had changed. What's wrong? James asked, noting my hesitation. Nothing's wrong, I assured him. I was just thinking about that day, the anniversary, how close we came to losing everything. He pulled me into his arms, his expression serious. But we didn't. You made sure of that. We made sure of that, I corrected. It took both of us to fix what was broken. True, he agreed. But it took your crazy trademark scheme to start the process. Speaking of which, I said, remembering something. The official trademark certificate arrived today. It's framed and ready for the office wall. Perfect, James grinned. A daily reminder of the lengths you'll go to when pushed too far. Let's hope you never need another demonstration, I said dryly. Trust me, he said, opening the door and guiding me inside. Some lessons only need to be learned once. As we entered our home, truly our home now, not just a place where we both happened to live, I thought about the journey we'd taken. From disconnection to rebirth. From being forgotten to being unforgettable. I'd trademarked our anniversary date as a desperate attempt to save my marriage and my life. I couldn't have imagined then that it would lead not just to reconciliation, but to a whole new chapter for both of us. A new business, yes, but more importantly, a new understanding of what really mattered. What time is the Chen dinner tomorrow? James asked, checking his phone calendar where all our important dates were now meticulously recorded. 6:30, I answered, and Mom said to bring that chocolate thing you made last time. Got it, he nodded, adding the dessert to his reminder list. Such a small thing, this simple exchange. And yet it represented everything that had changed. His attentiveness, his engagement, his presence in our shared life. Later that night, as we'd lay in bed together, James asked sleepily, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come up with the trademark idea? If you just let our anniversary pass like all the others? I thought about the crash, the void, the voice asking about my deepest regret. The answer came easily. We wouldn't be here, I said simply. Together like this. He pulled me closer. Then I'm grateful for your legal creativity. And I'm grateful for second chances, I whispered as he drifted off to sleep. Second chances that came in many forms. Sometimes as dramatic as rebirth. Sometimes as simple as the willingness to try again. To fight for what matters. To remember what's truly important. To make yourself unforgettable to the ones you love. And if that occasionally required trademarking a date and charging a licensing fee, well, that was just good business sense. And a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones you can't put a price on, but still need to protect with everything you have.